Number 1.
Daniel Goldman was abducted from his home by an unidentified assailant in the early morning hours of March 28, 1966 from Surfside, Florida. He was taken by gunpoint. He has never been seen again. It has been established that the abductor entered through rear patio door that was left unlocked at approximately 4:30 a.m. and woke Daniel's parents, Sally and Aaron Goldman, up and tied them up. He also put sharp objects in the ties to prevent them from stopping him. He then proceeded to wake Daniel up, force him to get dressed, and then took Daniel with his own vehicle, a white Rambler sedan. The vehicle was found a few hours after the abduction was reported, but no trace of Daniel was ever found. The abductor told Daniel's parents he expected a ransom of $25,000 by 6 p.m. as he originally planned to find $10,000 in the home but didn't. He said that, if he did not have the money by then, it would be increased to $50,000. He also threatened to kill or cause bodily harm to Daniel if his demands weren't met. Daniel was never seen or heard from again. It's believed that Aaron's wealth and succession as a contractor is what led to the Goldmans being targeted. The abductor is described as being Caucasian, weighing between 180 to 200 pounds, standing 5'83 to 5'11". He was wearing dark-colored clothing and a baseball cap and wore eyeglasses with silver rims. Authorities and volunteers that investigate Daniel's disappearance suspect that Daniel's case is related to an organized crime group. It's possible that the very police officers that were assigned Daniel's case knew his true fate. Physical as well as circumstantial evidence links several people to Daniel's abduction and murder. A fingerprint that was found at the scene of Daniel's abduction was found to belong to George DeFaze. He was part of the Trafficante organization, which was a crime organization at the time. It was also found that a man named Joe Cadaker was also involved in Daniel's fate. Cadaker's apartment was located just 2.5 blocks away from where Daniel's was found abandoned. It's believed that this is the scene of Daniel's murder. Authorities suspect that his murderers dismembered his remains and dumped them in the Gulf Stream. At the time of his disappearance, Daniel was a senior at Miami Beach Senior High School and spent much of his free time working and learning technology, and spent time with his girlfriend, Sharon Lloyd. Daniel's remains have never been recovered. His parents have since passed away in recent years. If you have any information concerning this case, please contact Miami-Dade Police Department 305-471-2400.
Number 2.
Natasha Shannon was last seen in Jackson, Michigan on May 8, 1985. She was last known to be asleep on the sofa of her family's residence in the 900 block of Maple Avenue. Her mother awoke in the early morning hours when she heard a car door slamming outside. She fell back asleep, however, and awoke at approximately 6 a.m. At that time she realized that Natasha was missing, and one of the doors to the home was open. No trace of Natasha was found. It's believed that Natasha either wandered away from the home through the door, or that she was abducted by a non-family member. They suspect these occurred between 1:30 and 6 a.m. An extensive search of the neighborhood turned up no sign of her. Strangely, 2 days after Natasha's disappearance, her mother's live-in boyfriend, Robert F. Forbes, was found shot to death near his mother's home. Investigators rule his death a suicide, but many speculate that he may have been murdered. He was a drug dealer and served time for heroin trafficking. Authorities do not believe that his death or crimes are related to Natasha's disappearance. At the time of her disappearance, Natasha attended a special education school for children with disabilities. While she did cry and have mood swings a lot, she did enjoy playing with makeup, singing, and playing with purses and shoes. Her disappearance remains unsolved. There have been no substantial leads in her case. If you have any information concerning this case, please contact Jackson Police Department 517-768-8727.
Number 3.
Timothy McKernan was last seen in Petaluma, California on April 23, 1973. He was last seen at approximately 10 a.m. after he departed his home. He rode his bike to the supermarket on Washington Street as he was to pay a utility bill his mother owed. Later that day he was seen near the library by a classmate who also spoke to him. She stated that he was acting normally and gave no indication that anything was wrong. Timothy disappeared after that. He never returned him that day and was never seen or heard from again. At 1 p.m. that day, his bicycle was found abandoned and unlocked at the Petaluma Public Library, and his family stated it was odd of him to just leave it there and unlocked. Authorities are unsure of what happened to him. His family maintains that there was no reason for him to just disappear or run away. Authorities have stated, though, that he may have been in low spirits that they were unaware of. They've investigated the possibility that Timothy took his own life. Authorities have also investigated the possibility of foul play, but there is no evidence of that, or whatever happens to him. He was a sophomore at St. Vincent's High School at the time of his 1973 disappearance. His case remains unsolved. If you have any information concerning this case, please contact Petaluma Police Department 707-778-4372.
Number 4.
A chilling anonymous letter to a newspaper reporter has rekindled interest in the disappearance 3 decades ago of an 11-year-old girl. Police are now seeking the person who sent the letter to crime reporter Joe Coed of the Scranton Times-Tribune. The letter was in response to an article in which Coed mentioned the 1986 disappearance of Michelle Jolene Lakey, last seen walking near her Scranton home, TV station WNEP reported. Written in neat cursive on lined paper, the letter details an incident in the late 1980s. The writer, she signs herself perhaps just a foolish old woman, said she was driving with her husband on Interstate 81 near Scranton one night, when she heard a horrific female scream. She then saw a fire, and the screams got louder, and sounded full of pain and terror. Her husband brushed it off as teens partying in the woods, but she remained troubled that she had heard someone being killed. Your story made me realize that it is not too late to tell what I feel I should have reported to the state police or the Scranton police that night more than 30 years ago, the letter said. Scranton police are indeed interested in the account. There was information in there that fit with other high-profile cases that had gone on in the same time, said Captain Dennis Lukasiewicz. In particular, it has eerie similarities to cases linked with Frank Ossolani, a Scranton business owner. Ossolani, now 74, is serving a life sentence for the 1989 rape and murder of 9-year-old Renee Waddle, whose body was found burning along a wooded private road in Roaring Brook Township, adjacent to Scranton. Ossolani was also the chief suspect in 3 other cases: the 1987 murder of Laureen Finn, a 19-year-old University of Scranton student whose charred body was found in an alley, and the disappearances of Jolene Lakey and 22-year-old Joanne Williams, whose bodies were never found. Jean Tallarico, the assistant district attorney during Ossolani's trial in 1990, told WNEP, "Sometimes, it's the littlest piece of evidence, the smallest crack of the door, that when it opens, can provide answers and develop evidence that can truly begin to answer questions and bring closure on a case, and most importantly, bring closure for a family." Police want to speak to the letter's writer and get more information, particularly since the area near I-81 has changed a lot. They say there will be no repercussions for not reporting it sooner.
Number 5.
Corey was last seen in New Columbia, Pennsylvania on October 12, 1986. He was last seen at his residence on 2nd Street. Corey lived with his mother, Debbie S. Dare, his sister, and a roommate, Alberta Soames, along with his 2 young children. On the night of his disappearance, Debbie left Corey asleep in her bedroom, while she went to a nearby convenience store to purchase a pizza at approximately 12:10 a.m. Corey's sister and sons and the young children were at the home during this time. The bedroom Corey was sleeping in was upstairs. Debbie returned home approximately 30 minutes later and discovered that Corey was missing from the home and that the door was open. Berta stated that she was awake and watching television and did not hear any strange noises and didn't see Corey leave or anyone come into the home. Corey has never been seen or heard from since that night. Authorities were able to confirm that Debbie did in fact go to the store when she said she did, and Alberta passed a polygraph test. His family members are not believed to have been involved in his disappearance. His parents were both ruled out in the case. According to reports, many of Corey's relatives received ransom calls in the months and years after Corey's disappearance. His grandmother stated she got a ransom call from an unidentified woman in January of 1991. The caller remains unidentified. In the summer of 2020, investigators have announced that they are close to solving Corey's disappearance and have offered a $10,000 award for anyone having information about the case. They do not believe he was abducted by a stranger, despite this being a publicized theory about the case. Investigators now believe someone in Edkin's family was involved in his disappearance. They have not disclosed whether they believe the child is still living, but have said they will likely make an arrest soon. Corey's disappearance remains unsolved. His case remains classified as a non-family abduction due to lack of evidence. If you have any information concerning this case, please contact Pennsylvania State Police 717-742-8761.
Number 6.
Holly Ann Hughes was last seen in Staten Island, New York on July 15, 1981. She was last seen at approximately 9:30 p.m. near Richmond Terrace and Park Avenue. Her mother sent her to the Port Richmond Deli to buy a bar of Ivory soap, and she was last seen as she made the purchase. Holly never returned home and was never seen or heard from again. Holly's mother reported her missing when she never returned home. Authorities did get witness statements regarding her disappearance, but they never found any evidence linking anyone to her disappearance. Holly's family has criticized the investigation into her disappearance because many of the witness statements that authorities received were not checked because the people had criminal records. The authorities have maintained, however, that they did not botch the investigation in any way. A month after Holly's disappearance, a man who called himself Sal called Holly's mother and claimed that he was holding the child captive and that he would safely return her if she performed sexual acts with him on camera. Her mother went to meet Sal at Penn Station with detectives in New York City. Holly's mother never believed that Sal had Holly, but rather that Holly has been deceased by this time. In 2001, a mentally incompetent sexual predator named Andre Rant was charged with first-degree kidnapping in Holly's disappearance. Andre's birth name is Frank Ration. He is also a suspect in the Staten Island 1972 abduction of Alice Pereira, the 1977 disappearance of Audrey Nierenberg, the 1983 Staten Island abduction of Tyus Jackson, the 1978 disappearance of Ethel Atwell, and the 1984 disappearance of Henry Gafforio. All of Rand's victims vanished from Staten Island. Authorities were able to determine that Andre's aunt lived in the same apartment building as Holly in 1981. Rand was previously convicted of the 1987 abduction of 12-year-old Jennifer Schweiger in Staten Island. Jennifer was murdered on the grounds of the Staten Island Development Center. The center is now defunct. Rand was never convicted of her murder because the jury could not reach a verdict on that charge. Andre was originally questioned regarding Holly's abduction in 1981 and authorities searched his vehicle, but did not find any evidence. His former residence on Vreeland Street, was searched but no evidence was found. Rand did at one point admit to playing hide and seek with Holly on the day of her disappearance, and giving her money to buy the soap, because she was dirty, but says he left her before she would disappear. Holly's mother identified Rand's voice as the one used in the ransom call, and witnesses reported that they saw Andre's green Volkswagen circling the area when Holly vanished, and some even said they saw the child in his car. While Rand was incarcerated at prison, he bragged about his sexual exploits, and some inmates testified that he confessed to kidnapping and murdering Hughes on the day she vanished. He also compared himself to serial killer Ted Bundy. Andre's attorneys stated that their client is innocent of abducting Hughes and that her family should be investigated for her disappearance. Prior to Holly's abduction, she had been in the middle of a custody dispute between her mother and father, and has been taken by both of them at one point. Holly's parents were ruled out as suspects in the onset of her disappearance. His attorneys also stated that the witnesses who saw Holly with Rand, or who saw her at all, were lying or mistaken. Despite this, Andre was convicted of first-degree abduction in October of 2004. Due to lack of evidence, they did not charge Andre with Holly's murder, and they hadn't found her body by that time. He was sentenced to life imprisonment for the crime, and was already serving time for Jennifer's kidnapping. It's unlikely that Rand will ever get out of prison. Andre maintains his innocence of all crimes he's suspected of. Holly has never been located, but authorities believe she was abducted. If you have any information concerning this case, please contact New York City Police Department 646-610-6914.